Part 1. The great chamber of the Galactic Celebration Commission was round and very old. Its walls were made of a white stone that had come from a moon that no longer existed. The ceiling was so high that clouds sometimes formed near the top, and the floor was smooth from a million years of feet and tentacles and other things sliding across it. Commissioner Al sat in their assigned seat and tried not to feel tired. They had held this position for only 20 cycles, which was young for their people lived for a very long time and moved very slowly through life. They did not like surprises. They did not like change. They especially did not like the small pink creatures that had recently joined the Galactic Union and were now standing at the center of the chamber, asking for time to speak. Humans, that was what they called themselves. Al had read the files on them. They lived on a wet planet with one sun and one moon. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 47 cycles ago, which was like yesterday in galactic terms. They ate dead plants and animals. They slept for a third of every day. They died after only 80 or 90 of their short years. And yet here they were, standing before a commission that had existed since before their species had learned to make fire, asking to change how the entire galaxy celebrated. The human ambassador was a female named. She had dark hair that she kept tied behind her head, and she wore a blue suit with small metal pins on the collar. She was smiling. Humans smiled a lot, Al had noticed. They seemed to think it made other species trust them. It did not make Al trust her. "Thank you for giving me this time," Ambassador said. Her voice was translated by a small device attached to her ear, and it came through the chamber's speakers in the neutral tones of galactic standard. "I know that humans are new to the Union. I know that we are young and small compared to most of your species, but I believe we have something valuable to offer." She pressed a button on a device in her hand, and the air above her head filled with light and color. Al blinked their 3 eyes and pulled back slightly in their seat. The images showed humans doing strange things. They were hanging colored lights on dead trees they had dragged inside their homes. They were setting fire to small sticks covered in wax. They were throwing colored powder at each other until their skin and clothes were covered in bright dust. They were wearing masks and costumes that made them look like monsters. They were dancing in the streets while music played from hidden speakers. "These are human celebrations," Ambassador said. "We call them holidays. We have hundreds of them. Some are very old, going back thousands of years. Some are new. Some are based on our religions, some on our history, some on the changing of our seasons. But they all have something in common." She paused and looked around the chamber. There were over 300 commissioners present, representing species from every corner of the galaxy. Some had bodies made of crystal. Some floated in tanks of special liquid. Some existed as patterns of light contained in magnetic fields. All of them were watching her. "They all bring us together," she said. "They give us reasons to stop working and spend time with the people we care about. They remind us that life is not just about survival. It is about joy." Al made a small sound that their species used to express doubt. The delegate next to them made the same sound. They looked at each other and felt a moment of shared understanding. "With respect, Ambassador," Al said, standing slowly to their full height of 3 meters, "the Galactic Celebration Commission has managed holiday protocols for 12,000 member species for over 1 million cycles. We have careful rules about light displays to protect photosensitive species. We have guidelines about music to avoid triggering sonic-dependent life forms. We have banned open flames in shared spaces since the Inferno of Prime. Your celebrations appear to violate many of these rules." Ambassador nodded. She did not seem upset by the criticism. If anything, her smile got wider. "You're right," she said. "Human celebrations are bright, loud, and often involve fire. They are messy. They are chaotic. They are everything your protocols try to prevent." "Then why are you here?" asked Commissioner of the Dominion. They were large and had many teeth, and they did not like wasting time. "Because your protocols are killing celebration," Ambassador said. The chamber went very quiet. Even the species that communicated through smells and chemicals stopped emitting for a moment. "I have read your reports," she continued. "Participation in official union holidays has dropped by 40% over the last 10,000 cycles. Species are celebrating less, not more. The holidays that remain are formal events where beings stand in designated areas and observe approved activities. They are not celebrations. They are obligations." Al wanted to argue, but the numbers in the reports were accurate. They had read them too. "Humans believe that celebration should be felt, not just observed," the ambassador said. "We believe that holidays should make people feel something, even if that feeling is complicated. We cry at funerals and laugh at weddings. We scare ourselves on Halloween and give gifts on Christmas. We make a lot of noise when a year ends and a new one begins. We eat too much and dance badly and stay up too late. And when the celebration is over, we feel like we have lived." She changed the image above her head. Now it showed a human family sitting around a table covered in food. They were talking and laughing. One of them, a very young human, was trying to climb onto the table, and the older ones were gently pulling them back. It was chaotic and noisy and completely unorganized. It was also, Al had to admit, somehow appealing. "I am not asking you to abandon your protocols," Ambassador said. "I am asking you to reconsider what celebration means. I am proposing that human holiday traditions be studied and adapted for use across the Union, not to replace your celebrations, but to bring them back to life." The debate that followed lasted for 6 standard hours. Species argued in favor and against. The worried about the noise. The were interested in the concept of Halloween. The collectorate of did not understand why individuals would want to gather in small groups when they could share all experiences through their hive mind. But the humans had brought data. They showed studies from their own planet about how celebration improved mental health, strengthened social bonds, and increased productivity in the long term. They showed how species that had encountered human holidays through informal cultural exchange had already begun adopting some practices. When the vote was finally called, Al sat in their seat and thought about the last time they had truly celebrated anything. They could not remember. They thought about the formal protocols they had enforced, the complaints they had processed about lights being too bright or music being too rhythmic, the endless meetings about approved decoration colors. They thought about the human family around the table, with the small one trying to climb up and everyone laughing. When their name was called, Al voted yes. The final count was close. 312 commissioners had voted, and the measure passed by only 17 votes. Ambassador thanked the Assembly and promised that humans would work closely with the Commission to implement the new standards respectfully and carefully. As the commissioners filed out of the chamber, Al saw the representative approaching Ambassador. The massive warrior was asking questions about the Halloween images, specifically about the costumes designed to frighten. The ambassador was explaining that humans dressed as monsters to face their fears in a safe way. They made a sound of deep approval. "We understand fear," they said. "We will be very good at this Halloween." Al walked past them toward the exit, feeling something strange in their chest. It took them a moment to recognize it as curiosity. They had not felt curious about anything in a very long time. Perhaps, they thought, the humans were onto something after all. Part 2. 6 standard cycles had passed since the vote, and the galaxy was different now. Al stood on the observation deck of Unity Station, the massive space station that served as the headquarters of the Galactic Union. Through the transparent walls, they could see ships arriving from every direction. Most of them were decorated in ways that would have been illegal just a few years ago. Colored lights hung from sensor arrays. Banners streamed behind engine pods. One large freighter had painted its entire hull to look like it was covered in snow, which was a human weather condition that many species found fascinating. A human holiday called Christmas was approaching, and the galaxy had gone slightly mad. "Commissioner," a voice came from behind Al. They turned to see Doctor, the human cultural who had been assigned to help manage the transition. She was a small woman with very dark skin and hair that she wore in many thin braids decorated with tiny beads. She was holding a cup of something that smelled bitter. "Coffee," she said, noticing Al looking at the cup. "A human drink. It helps us stay awake." "You need a special drink to stay awake." "We sleep a lot. I mentioned that in my cultural briefing." "I must have forgotten." Al turned back to the viewport. "I have been very busy forgetting things lately. There is too much to remember." Doctor walked over to stand beside them. "The reports from VII came in this morning," she said. "I read them. And—" Al made a sound that their species used when they did not want to admit something. "The gift-giving tradition has spread faster than we anticipated." This was an understatement. They were a species that communicated through precise harmonic frequencies. They could sing notes that no other species could hear, and their language was more like music than speech. When humans had introduced the concept of giving gifts to show affection, they had interpreted it in their own way. They did not give physical objects. They composed sounds. A gift was a piece of music created specifically for one person. It contained the feelings of the giver translated into frequencies. The recipient would carry the memory of that sound forever, and they could replay it in their mind whenever they wanted to feel those feelings again. The practice had become wildly popular. We're spending hours every day composing gifts for friends, family, and even casual acquaintances. Their industrial output had dropped significantly. Their government had sent a formal complaint to the commission. But the complaint also mentioned that average happiness levels on VII had increased by 37%. "They are giving each other love songs," Doctor said. "Literally. Their scientists think the practice is creating new neural pathways in their brains. They are becoming more emotionally complex as a species. They are also building fewer ships and processing less ore." "Is that more important than being happy?" Al did not answer because they did not know. The situation was similar across the galaxy. The Dominion had discovered Halloween, and their response had been enthusiastic in a way that worried many of their neighbors. They were warriors. They had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of being frightening. Halloween gave them permission to be frightening in a new way, one that did not involve actual violence. The first problem had occurred when a delegation arrived at a diplomatic conference on the planet. They were a peaceful species with large eyes and thin bones. They scared easily. When they arrived wearing costumes designed to make them look like zombie versions of humans, 3 diplomats fainted and 1 suffered a heart event. They were confused. They had thought the costumes were complimentary. "We made ourselves look like humans," the ambassador had explained. "Humans are your allies. We were showing respect." The second problem was that they had become very interested in candy. The human tradition of trick-or-treating, where young ones went door to door asking for sweets, had captivated them. Children were now doing the same thing, except children were 2 meters tall and had teeth that could bite through metal, and when they knocked on doors, the knocking sometimes broke the doors. But they were also, for the first time in recorded history, making friends with species they had previously only fought with. The practice of gathering in groups to celebrate the scary and strange had given them common ground with species who had always feared them. Wearing a silly costume was somehow less intimidating than wearing battle armor. "The border zone," Doctor said, as if reading Al's thoughts. "The joint harvest festival is still scheduled for next month. They do not harvest anything. They are trying something new." The Harvest Festival was a human tradition from many different Earth cultures. It celebrated the gathering of crops after a growing season. There were obligate carnivores who had never grown a plant in their entire species history. They lived on a world of crystal where nothing grew at all. And yet both species had agreed to participate in a joint celebration. They were planning to share food, even though their foods were completely different. They were planning to exchange gifts, sound gifts, and something. No one was quite sure what they were going to give, but they were reportedly working very hard on it. "What do you think they'll bring?" Doctor asked. "Weapons," Al said. "Probably very nice weapons." "That's a little unfair. They give weapons at every occasion. It is how they show respect." "Maybe this time will be different." Al made the doubting sound again, but they were beginning to realize that they made that sound a lot and were often wrong. The most surprising change had come from the collectorate of. They were a hive mind species. They did not have individuals. Every was connected to every other, and they shared all thoughts and experiences instantly. The concept of separation, of being alone, was completely alien to them. Humans had introduced them to the concept of the family dinner. For most species, a family dinner was not unusual. You gathered with people you were close to, shared food, and talked about your lives. But they had never done anything like this. Why would you gather in a small group when you could experience everything all at once with everyone? But some had tried it. They had separated themselves temporarily from the larger collective, formed small groups of 10 or 20, and sat down together to share nutrients and talk out loud instead of through the hive mind. The experience had changed them. "They are calling themselves individuals," Doctor said. "Some of them are choosing names. The main collective is not exactly happy about it. They are fracturing. Not fracturing, expanding. They are discovering that there are parts of consciousness that can only be experienced in smaller groups. Intimacy, privacy, the feeling of sharing something with just a few instead of with billions." A representative had been interviewed after one of these family dinners. The translation was imperfect, but the basic message was clear. We did not know that smallness could feel so large. We did not know that speaking out loud could say things that thoughts could not. We are still one. But we are also sometimes many ones together. It is strange. It is wonderful. Al watched the ships arriving at Unity Station. In a few days, the first universal celebration cycle would begin. Representatives from 12,000 species would gather here to celebrate together in ways that had never been attempted before. It would almost certainly be a disaster. But as they watched a battleship arrive covered in twinkling lights and what appeared to be a giant inflatable human figure in red clothing, Al found that they were looking forward to it. Doctor sipped her coffee. "You're smiling," she said. "Do not smile. You are now." Al touched their face with one long, thin finger. She was right. They had not even noticed. "I learned it from your cultural database," they admitted. It seemed appropriate. Part 3. The Universal Celebration Cycle began with a moment of silence that was supposed to last for 1 standard minute. It lasted for approximately 3 seconds. The problem was that 12,000 species had 12,000 different ideas about what silence meant. For some, it meant no sound at all. For others, it meant no movement. It meant no harmonic output above a certain frequency. It meant no one was currently trying to kill anyone else. The collectorate of was so excited about their first experience of formal group celebration that they could not stop their individual representatives from talking to each other. The sounds they made were small, just whispers really, but there were several hundred individuals present, and their combined whispering sounded like wind rushing through trees. Commissioner Al, standing at the center of Unity Station's Grand Plaza, watched the moment of silence collapse into cheerful chaos. They should have been upset. Protocol was being violated in dozens of ways. The lighting was too bright. The music that had started playing was too rhythmic. Someone had smuggled in actual fire in the form of small torches shaped like humans. But Al was not upset. They were watching teach a warrior how to hum a simple melody. That was very bad at it. The sounds they produced were more like grinding metal than music. But they were trying, and they was patient, and every time they got a note right, both of them made sounds of genuine delight. Doctor found the commissioner near the refreshment tables an hour later. The tables were organized by species' dietary needs, but beings were moving freely between sections, asking questions about unfamiliar foods and sometimes trying small tastes. A diplomat was experimentally putting a human cookie into their nutrient processing organ, while a group of humans watched with encouraging expressions. "How is it?" one human asked. They considered for a long moment. "It is very sweet. Why is it so sweet?" "We like sweet things. They make us happy." "Ah, the process this information along with the cookie. I understand. It is like joy but in food form." "That's actually a really nice way to put it." Al observed this exchange and felt something warm in their chest. They had been feeling this sensation more and more lately. Doctor had explained that humans called it happiness, or sometimes contentment. The language did not have a direct translation, but Al was beginning to understand it through experience. "They brought their gifts," Doctor said, joining Al by the tables. "Weapons." "Not weapons." This was surprising enough that Al turned to look at her directly with all three eyes. "What did they bring?" "Poems." The silence that followed was genuinely silent. Al said slowly, "The Dominion, the warrior species that has waged more wars than any other civilization in recorded history, brought poems as gifts. Apparently, when they learned about the tradition of sound gifts, they wanted to participate, but they cannot produce frequencies. So they adapted. They wrote poems about honor and friendship and the joy of battle. They are performing them now in the East Wing." Al had to see this for themselves. They walked through the crowded plaza, past species mixing and mingling in ways that would have been unthinkable a decade ago, until they reached the East Wing. A warrior stood on a raised platform, their massive form somehow looking smaller without battle armor. They held a small piece of paper in their clawed hands. Around them, a crowd had gathered that included humans and even a few representatives from the collectorate of. They cleared their throat, a sound like stones grinding together, and began to speak. "This is for my friend Crystalline Voice of Morning," they said, gesturing toward in the front row. "We met at the border treaty talks. I tried to intimidate them with displays of strength. They responded with a musical composition that made me feel peaceful for the first time in my adult life. I did not understand this gift then. I understand it now." They looked down at their paper. "Your music enters my ears and stills my blood," they read. "It makes the warrior in me rest. I have fought many battles and won many victories, but your friendship is the prize I value most. When I hear your songs, I remember that there is more to life than conquest. There is also standing beside someone who sees who you truly are and is not afraid." This voice cracked slightly on the last word. They quickly folded the paper and stepped back, looking embarrassed. The crowd was silent for a moment. Then the called crystalline voice of morning rose and produced a sound. It was not a composition, just a single sustained note. But Al, who had been studying communication, recognized it as the deepest expression of gratitude and love their species could produce. The warrior made a sound that might have been crying if they could cry. Other species in the crowd were definitely crying. Even Al felt moisture forming in their visual organs, which was extremely unusual for. Doctor appeared at Al's side again. She was smiling so widely it looked like it might hurt. "This is what I was talking about," she said. "This is what celebration is supposed to do. It connects us. It reminds us that we are not alone in the universe." Al watched as the warrior was surrounded by beings offering comfort and congratulations. A human was patting their arm. A was harmonizing softly in what seemed to be an attempt at a group hug. An individual was trying to explain the concept of emotional vulnerability to their collective through the hive link, and based on their expression, the collective was having difficulty understanding, but was interested in learning more. "I was wrong about your species," Al said. Wrong how? When humans first arrived, I thought you were too young and too foolish to contribute anything meaningful to the galaxy. I thought your celebrations were chaotic and undisciplined. I thought you did not understand how fragile peace between species truly is. They turned to look at the human beside them. I did not understand that chaos can be beautiful. I did not understand that discipline can become a prison. And I did not understand that peace between species is not about avoiding contact. It is about finding reasons to come together. Above them, the fireworks began. They had been designed by a committee that included 17 different species, and they were spectacular in 17 different ways. Sound sculptures made the air shimmer. War flowers burst into controlled patterns of flame. Human designs simply exploded into pretty colors and made everyone smile. The collectorate of had contributed something unexpected. Their fireworks contained pheromones that induced feelings of connection and belonging in most oxygen-breathing species. It was not quite like the hive mind experience, but it was close. For a few moments, everyone in the plaza felt what they felt all the time, the comfort of knowing you are not alone. Ambassador found Commissioner Al near the end of the celebration. She looked tired but happy. Her formal blue suit was rumpled, and there was what appeared to be crystal glitter in her hair. "Commissioner," she said, "I wanted to thank you. I know you were one of the votes that made this possible. Without your support, we never would have gotten the proposal through." Al considered their response carefully. "When I voted yes," they said, "I did not truly believe it would work. I thought perhaps the experiment would fail and then we could return to the old ways, the safe ways. And now I hope we never go back." The ambassador's smile softened into something quieter and more genuine. "That might be the nicest thing anyone has ever said to me. I am still learning how to say nice things. My species is not practiced at it." "You're doing great." Around them, the celebration was winding down. Species were saying goodbye in ways they had learned from each other. Were attempting to hug, which was dangerous but well-intentioned. Were offering small sound gifts as parting tokens. The individuals were trying something humans called a group photo, and they kept accidentally forming back into their collective consciousness and losing their individual expressions. Al watched it all and felt the warm sensation in their chest grow stronger. "Doctor told me something earlier," they said. "She said that joy is contagious, that it spreads from person to person like a disease, but a good disease. I did not understand what she meant until tonight. And now I understand that humans did not give the galaxy a gift of celebrations. You gave us something more important. You gave us permission." Permission to do what? To feel, to connect, to be silly and strange and emotional without being ashamed. Al paused, searching for the right words. "My species has lived for millions of years. We have seen empires rise and fall. We have watched stars die. We thought we had learned everything worth learning, but we had forgotten how to be happy." The last firework burst above them, spelling out messages in 100 languages. All of them meant the same thing: happy universal celebration cycle. "You reminded us," Al said, "and now we are remembering." The ambassador did not say anything. She just stood beside the commissioner as the lights faded, and the music softened, and 12,000 species began making their way home, carrying with them memories that would last for generations. The next universal celebration cycle was already being planned. The preliminary ideas included an opera composed by a poet, an experience-sharing ceremony open to individuals from other species, and something the humans called a galaxy-wide secret that was going to be an absolute logistical nightmare. Al was looking forward to all of it. The universe was vast and cold and mostly empty, but in this small corner of it, on a space station decorated with lights from 100 worlds, beings who had once been strangers were learning to celebrate together. They were learning that joy was not weakness. They were learning that connection was not dangerous. They were learning that the meaning of existence was not just to survive, but to live. And somehow, impossibly, it had taken the youngest and strangest species in the galaxy to teach them. The humans, characteristically, were already planning next year's party,